I'm just an interpreter used to small booths and quiet translations, unnoticed by most. But this assignment was different. No name was given, just a federal hearing, a sensitive witness, and strict rules. No phones, no bags, no questions. At the second checkpoint, a marshal handed me a black badge, no logo, just a code I steered to 4 and said, Room 3, Combs. The air shifted when I entered the courtroom. It wasn't just cold. It was heavy, like a basement sealed for years. The silence wasn't normal either. Guards stood rigid, clerks avoided eye contact, and the judge flipped through papers without reading them. All eyes fixed on one man in a loose gray suit, hands folded, unmoving. It was him, Sean Combs, Diddy, but he wasn't the man from music videos or magazine covers. His face was gaunt, beard unkempt, eyes unblinking for 7 minutes straight. I timed it, trying not to stare. He looked like he was watching something far away, detached from the room. A guard brushed his shoulder by mistake. The man's jaw tightened, and he was gone the next day, replaced without explanation. Another interpreter whispered, behavioral issue, and nothing more. The stenographer typed during breaks, eyes wide, fingers relentless even in silence. I translated briefly for a witness, then stayed to observe. Day 2 was worse. Fewer people, no public gallery, just federal staff. The cold seemed to radiate from Diddy's table. People hurried past it, steps quickening each time. He sat still, staring, untouched by the room's tension. Day 3 brought stricter security. No one uncleared was allowed inside. The girl who testified the day before, her seat was empty, but her presence lingered. A file slid under the table, marked Reflection Compliant D4. I'd seen that phrase years ago in a trial where evidence vanished and the defendant disappeared. When I glanced at the file, Diddy's head tilted slightly, his mouth twitching, not a smile, just a flicker. As a courtroom assistant for 7 years, I handled mundane tasks, filing, organizing exhibits, keeping the chain of custody intact. But that morning, the building felt wrong, like a second silence layered beneath the usual one. A marshal rubbed his temple. A clerk dropped her coffee and walked away. The witness entered alone, no escort, no purse, just a manila envelope. She wore plain clothes, hair tied back, and sat silently staring at Diddy. 10 minutes passed before she spoke, her voice flat. The first key card was for the balcony room. Lights off unless told otherwise. The defense attorney paled, sweat beading on his jaw. She described rooms with mirrors on all sides, called obedience chambers, where she was told to practice stillness until she couldn't recognize herself. People left the room, some crying, others shaking. She spoke of memory puzzles, videos showing people entering rooms they didn't recall, punishments for forgetting or remembering too much. She handed the envelope to the bailiff, saying, "This will reset the record." No one opened it. Her voice cracked only once, "I'm testifying to remember." Diddy twitched, his eyelids flickering, and whispered a word in a language no one recognized, warped and wrong. The girl flinched like she'd been struck. The interpreter paled, whispering, "That was a code." The girl stood abruptly and left without a word. Diddy didn't move again. As a marshal, I'd worked high-risk cases, but this was different. Rules were strict. No touching Diddy unless necessary, always face him if unrestrained, keep hands visible. One marshal laughed, asking if he was radioactive. He didn't show up again. Diddy didn't blink, his hands resting lightly on the table. By day 3, 5 marshals had rotated out, migraines, vertigo, no explanations. The room was freezing, but his chair was hot to the touch, its bolts partially melted, plastic warped. I adjusted it, feeling the heat through my gloves, and stepped back. The girl returned, saying, "You told me pain only matters if someone watches." Diddy stood suddenly, gripping the chair, knees trembling, a low grunt escaping him. The room froze. The judge ordered him to sit, but he didn't react. The girl said, "This was your favorite part," and he collapsed back into the chair, breathing heavily. Under the bench, scratched into the wood, were the words, "It watched through me." I didn't report it. A note in my locker later read, "You heard the word. Don't say it back." As a new clerk, I expected traffic cases, not this. My supervisor handed me a thin folder. Combs, don't ask questions. A note inside read, no personal notes. All entries must be synced. On day 4, a timestamp gap appeared in the logs, 11:42 to 12:04, nothing recorded. My handwritten notes mentioned a male witness, Marcelin, with a limp and glazed eyes, but no record of him existed. I found a USB in the evidence drawer unmarked except for Do Not File Cycle 5. It was warm to the touch. Alone, I heard my name whispered through the mic's static. I left the USB untouched. Later, an email with no sender contained courtroom sketches, showing Diddy with a faceless shadow behind him, labeled Cycle 5 mirroring teeth. In the trash, I found another sketch, Diddy, but his face was wrong, eyes too wide, mouth lopsided, a faded court seal upside down in the background. By day 5, the defense team was crumbling. Attorneys called in sick, shaken by the room's effect. My watch slowed near Diddy's table, ticking unevenly. He stood unprompted, saying, "I'll speak now." His voice filled the room, calm but heavy, describing a house with no doors, where guests gave up names, faces, voices. Looking at the girl, he said, "You didn't escape. You're just playing her now." The room stilled, the recorder glitched, and the stenographer's notes turned to unreadable loops. I filed for a psychological evaluation, but found it already submitted under my name, time-stamped hours before I wrote it. The next day, the court seal under Diddy's chair was different, not the court's, but his. As a cleaner, I was called in after the girl's testimony. The courtroom felt wrong, too bright, too still. Under the witness stand, I found salt arranged in tiny pyramids and scratch marks in spirals. Taped beneath the clerk's podium was a cracked mirror, reflecting an empty courtroom with Diddy seated alone, staring at me. I took it home, unable to discard it. My sketches of the room kept changing, figures appeared or vanished, but Diddy was always there. At night, I heard whispers through my vents. We watched him because we thought we were different. The mirror showed him again, looking past me. I smashed it, but each shard held a different face, mine, the girl's, Diddy's, staring back. On the prosecution side, a red envelope appeared in my folder, marked deflection compliant. Inside was a VHS tape. You wanted calm. We gave you a eraser. The footage showed the girl testifying, a faceless figure behind her. Diddy's head snapped toward the camera, smiling faintly. The tape cut out. That night, my reflection lagged, my eyes blinking late. I burned the tape, but at 3:33 a.m., the TV turned on, showing the courtroom's paused moment, Diddy staring at me. On the final day, I returned as an interpreter. The hallway was empty, the air thin. The stenographer's station was covered. A juror wore an eye patch. The girl's chair was gone. Diddy entered, emptier, his eyes hollow. He reached under the bench, holding something small, a mirror shard, a key card, I couldn't tell. He whispered, "I was calm because they watched, and now they'll never look again." Everyone blinked in unison, a ripple passing through the room. When I opened my eyes, he was gone. His jacket remained folded neatly. A clerk presented a sealed folder. No verdict reached. Record reset. The room emptied silently. Later, in a new city, I saw her again, the girl, older, watching me from the gallery, her gaze fixed on an empty chair beside her where a reflection smiled.